Hello everybody, Sam here, engineer, MBA, and investor. And in today's video, I want to talk about the interview between Verve Therapeutics and ARK Invest. This was published last night, so this is fresh new. I went over this interview and I want to give you some of my notes, some of my thoughts. Now, before we jump into today's video, you guys know the drill. Do like this video, smash the like button, destroy that like button. This is how we get our videos out there. The YouTube algorithms, you guys know how they work. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Do subscribe. Really does help the channel. If you've not hit the notification bell, you can hit it. And if you have any question, feedback, input, leave me a comments below. We try to read and respond to every single comment. So this interview, like I mentioned, was posted last night. The Genome Editing Revolution with Verve Therapeutics. And this is with ARK Invest, the legendary Ali Yerman, which I've covered in this channel, her blog posts, her tweets, her interviews in the past with the legends such as CRISPR Therapeutics CEO that we've covered last time. If you take a look at our video catalog, you'll see that interview that we covered. We took a bunch of notes. But for this particular one, Ali brought the CEO of Verve Therapeutics and the CSO of Verve Therapeutics, Sek and Andrew, respectively. And I think this was a great interview for a couple of reasons, right? I think, first of all, it is always refreshing to see one of these companies, specifically smaller CRISPR companies, if I may say, have an interview, because you sort of get to understand what is their thought process, like how they're thinking about it. I mean, CRISPR Therapeutics, in my opinion, we're still very, very early still, right? We're still gonna be experiencing, in my opinion, again, not financial advice, it's just my opinion. I think we're gonna be experiencing a 10x, 100x in the next years for CRISPR Therapeutics alone. But for Verve Therapeutics, they're even smaller, right? They're like barely $1 billion market cap or just above it at this point. And obviously, they're tackling a disease that is affecting literally 100% of the world. Heart disease. We all have our hearts, and we all want to avoid heart diseases because that is the leading cause of death in the world, right? Whether you're in US, Canada, Europe, Africa, this is the leading cause of death. And in fact, there was some statistics that the CEO here mentioned. He said that they have this three-step process, right? Step number one is to tackle the genetic diseases, right? And that's about 1 million people in US, another million in Europe, and we're looking at 31 million worldwide, right? And then the second step of their process is to actually tackle patients that have had at least one heart attack or heart disease, basically. And that is about 22 million people in US, similar number in Europe. So that's like 44 million just in Europe and US. And a couple of 100 millions worldwide. Those are big figures, okay, guys? Those are big figures. And obviously, the third step is 100% of the world, right? What are we, like 8 billion people in this world at this point? We're going to be 9 billion by the point that this type of therapeutic gets FDA approved. I think the total addressable market is just wide, right? And the third step is basically the end goal, which is to prevent heart disease, right? And who's not gonna pay the amount of money that it takes to prevent any future heart disease? I mean, look, we literally went on to take 2 vaccine shots, maybe 3 for some people at this point, even 4 for some people, to literally prevent a type of flu, right? But if I was to tell you that you need one shot, a one-time deal, to basically prevent any future heart disease, or at least known to man at this point, you're definitely gonna sign up for it. I mean, I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter if you're 20 years old, 15 years old, 25 years old. At this point, this is the leading cause of that, and that this company is working on it, and they actually have a product. It's basically similar to a vaccine dose. In fact, this is what the statement was from the CEO Sek here. He said that COVID mRNA vaccine looked like our drugs. And then he said a couple of dollars is worth about what is a mRNA vaccine drug, about 100 microgram, right? And then he said that, their plan is to be cost effective, because if their end goal is to reach 100% of the world, then they cannot afford to have therapeutics or a type of drug that's going to cost like hundreds and hundreds of thousands, right? It just doesn't make sense. You cannot scale that. But then he said, 35 milligram of dose, right? Which is what, they're aiming for their, at least their program 1 and program 2 therapeutic CRISPR drug in the future, if they approve, of course, which is going to tackle the lowering of LDL, right? And which is basically just knocking out the gene for PCSK9, for example, for their program 1. And the idea there is that if you extrapolate those numbers, right, and I did that calculation really quick, then you get to 35,000 micrograms, right, instead of 35 milligram, which is the figure he said in an interview, the CEO of Verve Therapeutics. And if you extrapolate that, comparing to the mRNA vaccine, which again, this is his quote, he said, COVID mRNA vaccine look like our drugs. That's going to cost you about $350. $350, which is basically their end goal, to have a one-time deal drug shot in your liver, and that's it. I mean, that's it. Like, you basically inject yourself with that CRISPR drug in your liver, and for $250, which by the way, it is most likely going to be covered by health authorities, specifically in Canada. There is no way Canadians like myself are gonna be, asked by the government to pay for $300, $400, $500 for something that literally is going to prevent you from heart disease in the future. This is going to be just like the vaccine, in my opinion. It is going to be offered to all citizens. Now, I can't speak for every country, but I'm pretty sure all developed countries are going to flock over this. So my point is that your taxes and the governments are going to fund all of this. So you don't even have to worry about that. But the point is that for $350 worth per dose to basically prevent any heart disease in the future, I think that's novel. I think that's amazing. I love what this company is doing. I mean, this was basically an interview for newer investors, in my opinion. It was not necessarily that technical, although they did get a little bit technical with delivery methods, and they did get technical with the importance of delivery. There are different programs, their end goal, obviously. They talked about cost. They also talked about, the difference between what the results they got, what they had to provide to the FDA to prove the effects about off targets, if there are any off targets. And in the CSO words in Verve Therapeutics, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said that there are no off targets with what they're doing because they're going straight in the liver, and they're confident that they can edit 100% of the liver cells that they need to edit, so that the future cell, after 100 days, with all the cells of the liver sort of recreate themselves, will have the modified gene, and then you can basically knock out PCSK9 and then basically lower your LDL levels, and then that's gonna basically cure your patients, whether that's in step 1, which is genetic disease, whether that's step 2, to basically for a patient that already had one type of heart disease or heart attack, and then step 3, which is preventing any future heart disease. So I find this to be novel. I am amazed by this type of company because they're basically going ahead and say, you know what, we're not gonna be doing anything with like other diseases which are serious. It is novel. They recognize that, whether that's rare or common diseases. But what's amazing is that they're looking at the big picture. They're like, look, this is the leading cause of death. We're going to tackle that, okay? And we're going to use base editing, like they've mentioned here, because they compare CRISPR-Cas9 with base editing at some point. And they said that base editing has the best way of doing what they want to do to achieve. They've gotten data on monkeys, for example. They've gotten metrics on non-humans. Obviously, they haven't gone through their phase 1 still, their clinical trial. But they're quite confident that base editing is the way to go forward with this type of program. And the idea there, again, is to make it cost-effective, is to prove to the FDA that their data is solid, efficient, and safe, and that they can go forward with that. And there were a couple of other tidbits as well. And again, I highly recommend you guys to watch this interview. Ali did a great job with the questions. I'm in awe sometimes by how she's able to like ask a question and navigate through these conversations. Because you got to remember, guys, these types of interviews, they're not with your average Joe, okay? And these are interviews that are, basically at a high level scale. I mean, you're going to have millions of people at some point watching these types of interviews. You got to be careful with what you say, especially when you have the CEO of a public company worth over $1 billion. I mean, there are some risk involved with the way you ask questions, the way you get answers, the way you navigate questions and navigate conversations. So props to her, kudos to her, well done, Ali. And as far as what I think about this interview as a general, I think it was an amazing interview. Like I said, I think it was more for newer investors. I think it was more for people that are interested in this company, and for people that are already invested in Verve Therapeutics. I would highly recommend you to watch it because you get to see and hear how the leadership is thinking. In fact, there's a quick story there where they talk about the early days where they had to do everything, right? And even now, sometimes, maybe not now, but up until recently, apparently, the CEO and the CSO did their own PowerPoint slides, which I found extremely interesting because this is like the Elon Musk type of approach where you're in the factory, you're doing the work. I mean, that is the type of leadership that I would love to see every company in its early days adopt, right? And there was a great story there in the early days, even earlier than that, where Verve Therapeutics CFO, I think they made a comment that they have to move like in 4 times in 4 years, something like that, offices. And in one of the moves, the CFO was literally, putting the desk together, putting the computers together, branching the Ethernet cables and all of that. And that's basically the CFO. When you think about it, CFOs, I mean, your standard public company CFO is definitely not setting up desks. Okay, there's another team called IT, and there's on-site support that usually do those types of work. So, or facilities teams. So kudos to Verve Therapeutics for this interview. I loved it. Great job to Sek, the CEO, and Andrew, the CSO. Lots of hidden gems there, lots of great information. But again, we'll see what happens with humans trial. We'll see how their program 1 data comes in. I mean, we're expected to get some sort of data at this point in 2023. I would love to see them dose their patient. I would love to see Beam Therapeutics succeed from all of this, because don't forget, Beam Therapeutics do have a stake in Verve Therapeutics, part of their deal from their program by licensing base editing. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll end this video like this. Hopefully you guys appreciate this. Let me know what you guys think about this interview. Like this video if you found value. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're not. And thank you so much for watching it. And have a beautiful Saturday and weekend. Thank you.